We all want the shortcut, that one tweak, the one program, the one magic pill that makes everything click. But here's the truth, there isn't one. The people who win don't find the magic pill, they become it. Because the real magic isn't in speed, it's in how you show up for the process. This week I watched one of my private clients hit a massive milestone. Her book hit #1 on Amazon. And guess what? It wasn't a 6-week miracle. It was a 6-year journey. But the way she showed up for that journey, that's what made it magic. This week, we're going to be busting the magic pill myth, the belief that success should be fast, easy, or instant. And we're going to see how a breakthrough is not a moment, but a process that we can absolutely find joy in. So join me in this week's episode of Weekly Momentum, and we are going to bust the myth of the magic pill. Yesterday, one of my private clients hit #1 as a best-selling author. Almost 6 years after she started. 6 years of showing up, falling down, and getting back up again. And that's what I want to talk about today. Why it's not about how fast you get there. It's about who you become on the journey. We've been talking a lot about breakthroughs in the last few episodes. And what I realized as I was thinking about that this week and reflecting back on the 6 years I'd been working with this client to become a best-selling author, I realized that what I hadn't shared with you is that breakthroughs are a series of choices that you make that become a completely different reality. A breakthrough is just a way of describing the distinction between the way things were and the way things are now. We often stumble into breakthroughs, as I talked about in the last episode, by experiencing what we don't want, often in very painful ways. But it doesn't have to be that way. I shared some ideas on how you could shift that in the last episode. But what I didn't say, and I'm realizing now is so important to point out, is that it isn't necessarily a split second that is the distinction, the boundary, the border between who you were and who you are now, or the old reality and the new reality. That breakthrough is a gradual process. And what I think happens is there is a moment when we get this glimpse, this aha, that we've changed. And that's when we realize we've had a breakthrough. Because when we're moving along through the process, we don't know that things are changing. They just are happening so slowly that we don't notice. And it's so funny because I keep thinking about the metaphor that we all use all the time of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. And I don't remember if I said this in the last episode, but I definitely was talking about it to the members and to clients afterwards because it hit me. We talk about that experience of the caterpillar going to become the butterfly and fluttering away as this magical, amazing process. But I started thinking, when I started thinking about breakthroughs and how often they're very painful, my goodness, I don't think the caterpillar/butterfly is in the cocoon going, oh, here's my arm, or here is my leg, here's my wing. I think it's painful. I would imagine it's probably a very painful process that looks more like a horror movie than this magical sprouting a wing. And as the caterpillar/butterfly is going through that process, they probably don't realize what's going on until there's this moment when they realize they're flying and they're a butterfly. And I think what we do is we think that's what it is. That's the moment. That's the transformation. I'm flying. It was magical. Now I'm flying. And we forget the journey that it took to get to that point. And I can't think of a better example than my client who, as I just mentioned, hit #1 on Amazon just yesterday. It was thrilling and exhilarating and exhausting. all day yesterday. And the last 6 years has been this amazing journey. But before I talk about her story, I want to talk a little bit about my story. And I've shared bits and pieces of who I am in some of these episodes. I do believe that we learn mainly through our own experience, but I also believe that we can get glimpses and insights from hearing other people's stories, other people's truth. I like to use stories in my own life to illustrate that. A big part of that is because my why, and once again, that's coming from Simon Sinek, The Power of Why, his book, and also his TED Talk. My why is to live out loud. And so I share the journey that I'm going through. And that's a big piece of what I do in this podcast so that you can see that we're all in this together, that we're all evolving and growing and breaking through. And it's not all a magic pill, an instant transformation. Today, though, I want to share a little bit about why I am the Get It Done Diva, because I think the name can be very misleading. The name Get It Done Diva was given to me when I was in a mastermind group almost 20 years ago. So when I first started out, I knew I wanted to coach. I loved coaching, but I was stumbling, like many people do, with finding my exact niche. Who is it that I want to coach? And I knew that I enjoyed the elements of life coaching that I had been trained in, but I really enjoyed the business, the professional side of coaching, which I'd also been trained in. And I wanted to combine the two. And so I focused on professionals and small business owners. Even so, I was struggling to find who exactly is my client so that I could become the lighthouse and transmit that message and attract those clients to me. And also so I could create the material and the ideas and the strategies and the tools because I love doing that. That would be a perfect fit for my ideal client. And I was really stumbling around because what I do is very different and it's hard to explain. You may feel that way about what you do as well, because I think there are certain professions or certain people that do something in their industry different than everyone else. They are forging a path forward, they are trailblazers, and it's a little difficult to explain to everybody what you're doing when you're innovative, when you've created a different way of doing things. And for me, it was just intuitive. It was just, I didn't know any other way of showing up. It wasn't that I wanted to be a trailblazer. It was just that I saw where I could be of the most use. And so what I ended up doing for a lot of my clients was, first of all, help them get really clear on what they wanted. But I didn't want to leave them there. I found that there were a lot of coaches out there where you went, you got coaching, and then the coach would send you off to go do the stuff, to do the implementation. And what I noticed from my clients when I started out doing that at the beginning was that they'd get lost. They'd get dragged back into the day to day. They'd get focused on working in their business. And then all of the great stuff that we'd come up with to work on their business, they couldn't find the bandwidth or the time to do. The other thing that I noticed with my clients was, especially around technology or needing other people to do things for them, like build a website or write a best-selling book or create an online course, set up a contact management system or email marketing, putting together different pieces of technology, figuring out how to set yourself up on social media. Like all of these things for my clients who were smaller business owners or professionals that didn't have a big team or a team at all, they were lost when it came to a lot of the implementation. So I morphed into not only being the coach to help pull out of them the clarity of what they wanted and what it might look like, I then began to see that it was important for me to help them get it done. And I did this very successfully. Over the years, I've developed packages for my clients, which involve done for you, like the best-selling author package, the online course builder, the rockstar speaker package, where I'm literally doing all of the heavy lifting so that it's really easy. It's my client's voice, it's their message, it's their ideas, but I make it so much easier for them so that they can actually create what they have in their mind, even when they're a busy professional. I also started to do workshops and get it done days and different packages for clients to help them with a lot of the technology pieces that they needed and doing the heavy lifting around that and helping them find people to help them. So it became so much more than just coaching. I created my whole different genre, you might say. And I was explaining this to the mastermind group I was in, and they all wanted to help me figure out the language. And one lady looked at me and she said, "You're the Get It Done Diva." And that's where the name came from. And I'm so grateful for that moment when she saw that in me. She helped me see there was this huge gaping hole that I would be able to fill if people could understand what it was that I did. There's so many trainings and workshops and retreats and conferences for professionals now to show them how to do things, even maybe giving them a system or online training to help them actually execute it. But then most people just don't have time or the bandwidth or get bogged down in the implementation and the execution of things. And so that's why I became the Get It Done Diva. And it was so interesting because as soon as I got the name the Get It Done Diva, I'd been percolating on wanting to write another book, my first proper book, to be honest. I'd published other little books here and there, mainly workbooks, and I really wanted to do a proper book. And I was struggling. I didn't know exactly what the main theme or the focus was going to be. But when I came back from that mastermind session, full of excitement about the title Get It Done Diva, I was sitting watching my daughter do gymnastics, and I had a pen and paper. I had my planner with me. I always have my planner with me because I never know when a great idea is going to hit me. And I was just scribbling on a piece of paper, doing a mind map, thinking about the different ideas. And suddenly I realized the name of the book I was going to write was The Get It Done Diva's Guide to Business. And I wrote that in the center of the mind map. And then I, like spokes on a wheel coming out from that central idea, I wrote down all of the things that I wanted to cover in that book. Literally, this mind map, which I still have on my wall at my home office, framed. It's messy, but I'm so proud of it. It maybe took me 10 minutes to do it, and then I added for a little while and refined it. 3 weeks later, I was number one on Amazon with that book. 3 weeks from the moment I did the mind map. I'm being a contradiction right now because on one hand, what I'm saying is things take time. I just told you that I worked with an author for 6 years on her book. That was a different circumstance. After we had gotten started on working on her book for a little while, COVID hit. And yes, we could still communicate via Zoom and phone, but the world was kind of thrown into chaos. We didn't know what was going on. So even though we could have continued, we were all paused, or at least myself and my author were, not knowing whether to proceed again yet, not being able to focus. And then when we did pick up again, we changed. She changed. And now the book was a different book than it was when we had started. And the way I work on the book writing process with my clients is I want the book to birth itself. Sometimes that happens in 3 weeks, like with my book, The Get It Done Diva's Guide to Business. But most of the time, that process takes a couple of years. In this case, it took a lot longer to reveal itself. But that journey was amazing. We had laughter, we had clarity. And another reason that the journey took so long with this particular client is because in tandem, as she was writing the book with me, she was building a new business. She'd already had a successful business. and sold it for multi-million dollars. And she was ready for her next thing, but she wasn't 100% clear on what that was. And one of the things I love about working with my authors is there's so much room for discovery, for growth, and they come out of the process of writing a book with me completely different, knowing so much more. And when you're building a business and writing about some of the elements that are in that business in a book, and you're figuring it out and you're testing it out and you're getting clear on things, there's a lot of change. You need to allow time to figure things out. And that's what we did together as we worked on the book. We got really clear on who she was, who her business was, what her why is. Like I shared with you, mine is living out loud. Every one of my authors, I get clear on what is their message, what is their why, what are their guiding principles, so that we can make sure that those are clear and present in the book. For me, being the Get It Done Diva means a couple of different things. It means that I'm going to help everyone unleash their Get It Done Diva. And I'm going to show up as a Get It Done Diva to help you do that. And one of the best ways that I do that is simply creating the space for you to work on your business and your work and your life, because we get so caught up in the day-to-day, there's not a lot of bandwidth left. And all of those big dreams that you have, those brilliant ideas, the books that you want to write, or the online course or training, or that retreat that you want to put on, that craving you have to be booked out as a speaker or do a TED Talk, all of these beautiful ideas and this passion that you have for them is working on your business. And what I love to be as the Get It Done Diva is the champion, so that I can champion all of these amazing professionals so that they can share their brilliance with the world. And as they do that, there are breakthroughs that happen. There are shifts, there are changes. It's not only when you write a book that you change because you have to get really clear on what you're saying. The same thing happens when you're speaking, when you're making videos or reels or creating content to share or being on a panel. When you birth anything, you shift and you change. And that's what the breakthrough is. It is moving from one way of being to another. And it's a beautiful journey. Now, it's much easier to go on that journey if you have the expectation that it might take a while. However, if you go on that journey of unleashing that brilliant idea on the world, and you expect it's going to be like a magic pill, that it's going to happen overnight or instantly or really quickly, and it doesn't, which most of the time it doesn't, then you're going to be very frustrated. It's not going to feel good, and you're not going to enjoy the journey. And then the transformation isn't quite the same. You then turn this beautiful journey into a drag, a pain in the ass, a monotony, pushing it out, a really hard birth. And it doesn't have to be that way. Now, going back to the miracle of my first book being birthed in 3 weeks, right? From idea all the way to #1 bestseller, I had primed that pump for a long time. I had done research and learned all about publishing books. I'd published some workbooks. I was able to do a lot of the heavy lifting myself because I knew all of that, so I wasn't reliant on anyone else or on needing to invest in someone else to do that. I had a body of work that I had been using, tools and training and strategies in real time with my members and my clients for many years. And I had success stories, and I had a deep knowledge and understanding of what my method and what the Get It Done Diva's Guide to Business was. It was just missing a name. And so when I did sit down and start writing it, I was able to pull from a lot of different places. Content I already had. It was easy to fill in the gaps, and it came together really, really easily. Now, I also want to point out that my latest book, the Daily Momentum book, which came out, I think, almost 2 years ago now, and I'm really the most proud of, that book, on the other hand, took a couple of years, maybe a little longer. There was a lot of back and forth. It took longer, but that was okay because I didn't put the pressure on it that I needed to do that book in 3 weeks. I knew that I needed to allow the book to reveal itself. By then, I'd already worked with other authors and developed packages to help other authors create best-selling books. So I understood that they don't all come out in 3 weeks. And it was okay with me. And it was that expectation that allowed me to be able to enjoy the journey. There's one last story around this, which I think is really helpful too. And that is when I went to create the audio book for my book. Now, what was interesting about that is I have an acting background. I had a really good friend and client who helped me set up all of the microphone and the technology to do the audiobook. I had the book written, so I just had to read it. So in my mind, it took about 4 or 5 hours to read the book. So I figured, you know what? It's probably going to take me maybe double that to record it. And then I've got to do a little editing, but I get things in one take and I've shot videos before very quickly. So a couple of days, let's give it a week and I'll get my audiobook done. I was excited about it. I felt confident somewhat in the technology and what I was doing. And I set up a winning environment for myself at my office and made it my recording studio. And I sat down and I started recording and doing a little bit of the editing as I went along so I could make sure that the content was good and I wouldn't have to come back and re-record it. After 3 days of recording for maybe 4 or 5 hours a day, I had 7 pages of the book done. And the book is like over 300 pages long. So my expectation going into this project had been, this is a 7-day project. And so I took a moment, I regrouped, I looked at how things were going. I was happy with the content I was creating. I knew that I would get quicker at it. However, right now, even if I got twice as fast, it still was going to take a lot longer than a week. And so I decided to set it as a 90-day goal. Instead of, well, I'm just going to do it as quick as I can and pushing through it and making it miserable, I decided to work on it a couple hours a day and just enjoy the process and make it a 90-day project. I finished in under 90 days, including the editing, the uploading, put it on Audible. It's been enjoyed by many people since then. And it was a really great experience for me. I enjoyed the journey. Now, if I had gone the other route and I had pushed through, your voice can only do so much talking in one day before it doesn't sound good anymore. You're going to lose your energy when you're recording audio or video. And if you do too much, then not only does your instrument, your voice, and your body not feel good, I think that it comes across in the words and the energy of what you're doing that you're not really present and you don't really care about it if you're pushing something out, whether it be an audiobook or a new project that you're working on or a new business you're creating or a website. It doesn't matter. I think it's obvious in the output, the energy that's going into the input, the energy that's going into whatever that project is. So I was really glad I approached it that way, and it made all the difference in the world. So let's take a quick walk through the weekly momentum process. You can dive deeper in the weekly planning for busy professionals if you really want to get into each step. But I want you to at least get a little taste, and we'll weave in all of the elements that we've talked about in this week's episode. Step 1 is rewind. This is where you're reflecting but without judgment. Start by looking back at your week and asking, where did I chase the magic pill? Did you expect instant results, the perfect post, the viral moment, the quick win, instead of honoring the process? Notice where impatience showed up. Rewind is about awareness, not about blame. When you catch yourself rushing, realize you can choose again. You can hit the brake. Step 2, realign. This is where you reconnect to the long game vision. The long game only feels hard when you forget what you're playing for. Realign by zooming out. Remember why you started, the book that you want to write, the stage that you want to stand on, the program that you want to launch. Every step is building the foundation for the next level. This week, think about how can I bring joy back into the process? Step 3, plan. This is where you design your week. You design your week and create consistent momentum. When you know it's a long game, you stop cramming everything into one week. You can plan smaller, better. Make sure that you're weaving into this week's weekly goals things that are helping you make progress on your business, on your life, not just in it. And finally, step 4, plug in. This is where you plug in. You create the time and the space to do the things that are on your weekly top 10. Keeping in mind that expectations play a huge part in this. You're always going to have a tendency to think that you can achieve more than you actually can. Learn how to underpromise and overdeliver. That feels so much better. And so as you're plugging in what you're going to do, you might realize that you need to adjust the plan a little bit. Now, all 4 parts of the weekly momentum process follow through the pages that are in the momentum planners. So if you're interested in getting one of my planners that I use with all of my clients to help them with the weekly momentum process, you can go to the website getitdonediva.com, or you can click the link below. This week, as you move through the week, remember there's no magic pill. There's only momentum. And when you treat the process like the prize, the results take care of themselves. Refuse to sacrifice your joy now for joy later. Momentum takes time. It takes attention and it takes heart. The joy that you're chasing isn't waiting at the finish line. It's hiding in the process that you're living week after week as you're moving towards the finish line. Every decision, every draft, every small act of courage, it's all shaping the next version of who you are. That's where the real breakthrough begins. When you look at my best-selling author, the dream started just as a someday idea. She faced the fear, the doubt, and there was restarting and figuring things out. She learned how to rewrite, refine, and she learned how to ask people for help, including myself, to help her with the process. The breakthrough wasn't the book launch. It was who she became in the process. Every draft made her more confident. Every setback built her resilience. Every delay deepened her message and the commitment. That's the real return on investment. The person you become while building your dream, while sharing your brilliance, while launching your big ideas. If you're a busy professional, I know you've got big ideas. Maybe you want to write a book, get booked as a speaker, or design an online course, a retreat, or a workshop. You feel that potential inside you, but maybe you're waiting for the right time, the perfect plan, or that magic moment where it all feels easy. But the magic isn't finding the shortcut. It's in choosing to go all in, knowing it's a long game and deciding to just love the process anyway. You don't need to sacrifice your joy now for joy later. The long game energy wins when you pace yourself and build systems. You create sustainable success. Joy fuels momentum. If you enjoy today's work, you're much more likely to stick with it tomorrow. What's one project you've been rushing? And what would it look like to slow down and enjoy it? Could you get some support with it? Set up micro milestones. For me, with the audiobook, I set up the milestones of doing a chapter each day, and then I celebrated the progress as I made it. Realize that the learning and growing, the figuring out you're doing is all part of this breakthrough that you're having, and that you don't have to do it on your own. If you invite in a coach or someone else to the process, it makes the magic happen a little bit quicker. And if you're ready to start creating with more clarity, I want to personally invite you to join me inside my Breakthrough Year program. This is where we walk step by step through designing a year that feels aligned, doable, and deeply fulfilling. You'll create a one-page roadmap for success and learn the same rituals that I've used and taught my clients to make every single year a breakthrough year. Years that build books, businesses, and lives that light you up without burning you out. Because your breakthrough shouldn't cost your joy. It should amplify it. It should make you feel more alive, more grounded, and more ready to share your brilliance with the world. If you're ready to make the next year the year that you finally work on your dreams instead of just around them and waiting to get to them, tap the link below for your breakthrough year in the show notes. When you stop chasing quick fixes and having crazy expectations and start instead honoring the long game, that's when momentum becomes your magic and your brilliance becomes your legacy. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode of Weekly Momentum. I look forward to seeing you next week.